here with Ravichandran, who is the founder and CEO of Aura, and Jeffery Katzenberg, who is multi-talented, many titles, now WndrCo, but also an investor in Aura. Is that correct? What brings you here? Tell me a bit more about Aura, and Jeffery, I'm going to start with you. Why Aura?
Well, I think there's this sort of massive problem that all of us have and share with one another, which is, in the world today, how do we create digital safety for ourselves? We've moved our lives onto these devices, and we've done so many things to protect our homes. Think about Nest cameras and Ring doorbells, and to protect our physical stuff, and we've actually left the back door open. And I just feel like that's such a huge, relatable consumer problem that needs to be solved more every day. And Hari, our founder, I think has actually pioneered what is a great product and something that will be of value and ubiquitous for everybody. And that's how I related to it on a very personal level.
So Hari, I want to hear more about where the company's going, but I'm intrigued. You have investors that bring money, and you have investors that bring expertise. What does Jeffery bring to the table for you?
I know it all.
I've been there, yeah.
Jeffery and WndrCo in general have been this really interesting hybrid of both capital and like a lot of operational expertise. Both Jeffery and his partner Sujay have built great businesses, have been parts of great businesses, so they've got really good pattern recognition, and they really aren't scared to roll up their sleeves and become a real thinking partner, open up their Rolodex, and it's been an amazing partnership for us the last 5 years, because a lot of the build with the CEOs and founders, it's kind of a lonely job because you don't really have anybody else to continuously talk to that you can trust.
Like your personal board of directors.
Yeah.
Well, we actually call ourselves at WndrCo, each one of us, the partners, there are 5 of us, we're the founders behind the founders. So having walked the journey that Hari is on today multiple times ourselves, I think we have a good perspective on how to really be there in support of him and his needs as he grows this company. And for us, it's just very exciting to sort of be the wind beneath somebody else's wings rather than doing it ourselves.
So one of the challenges with every company, there's the technological challenge, and I know that, on that basis, Aura is doing very well. What is your biggest...
And you do think of me as a deep engineering technologist, Diane. I know that. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
What is Pixar? But tell me a little bit about what you see as the pain points. Is it the attention economy, like getting people to understand what you do, because it's a crowded space, but yet it's obviously a big white space too.
It's a great need, yeah. So I think the biggest thing for us is in the general consumer sentiment, there's a lot of these little incidents that happen, like I was part of a breach, my credit file got wedged, and people don't connect the dots that a lot of these are related. So generally there's a sense that, hey, I don't think this problem can affect me. Like it's, maybe it happened to this other person, maybe it happened to somebody I know. And so getting people to really think of this as something very personal, and it's just a numbers game. Everybody's going to be impacted by it. You don't need to wait till post-impact, but really start thinking about it proactively. And so a lot of our challenge is getting consumers to think about preventative ways to not have cyber incidents in their life versus wait till post.
I think one of the things I admire about founders in general is this desire to take big swings. I'm going to pivot to you, Jeffery. I think whether it was, I remember talking about you getting fired from Disney and that great career that followed. We've got Quibi. What did you learn from that? Because I think that ability to both pick yourself up, to see an opportunity, but then to kind of move on to where the next space is.
So here's the way I think I'm on career 6 or 7 right now, and there's a couple of ways, which is one, what I would say is that there's always a silver lining in every gray cloud. You have a gray cloud, and even those moments that you think are most dire, my instinct was always just pick back up and, go at it again. And more sort of in a more sort of tactical way, the way I would think about it and the way I urge entrepreneurs to think about it is, if your ambition is to do something unique and original, which is what every great entrepreneur does. Hari saw a white space, and he wanted to do something that no one else was doing. Well, by definition, unique and original equals risky. Risky equals, from time to time, failure. And so if you're scared of failure, if you do not have the resolve, or the resources to actually factor failure into what you're doing, you will not take risk. And if you don't take risks, you're not going to do anything unique and original. And so, Quibi, probably my biggest and harshest and hardest failure is...
To be fair, there was some good content on there.
Well, there was some great stuff, and I'm very proud of it. So the interesting thing about Diane is that I would say to you that there are some failures that are humiliating, and there are some that are humbling. Not necessarily all or both. For me, Quibi was a humbling failure, and I wasn't humiliated because I actually thought we tried to do something truly revolutionary, not evolutionary. We took a huge swing, and I'm proud of the fact that when it was clear it wasn't going to work, we just shut it down and returned hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to our investors. Because for me, it's the first time I ever lost money for investors, and that I found humiliating. That's the only part of Quibi that bothered me. But, for me, I would say the best lesson of that is we did not have product market fit. And the moment that was clear is the moment I pivoted to not just trying to sustain it or run the clock out on it, but get my investors as much money back as I possibly could. And that's a hard lesson, right? That's a tough, I think that's a unique...
Well, you mentioned a number of technologies that are now trying to fill this market that you talked about with Aura. What's the unique product market fit? Is it that connecting the dots aspect, or what do you think makes it so?
Let me just say to you, and then let him jump in here. It's not that there are no solutions today. There are hundreds and hundreds of solutions, whether it's antivirus or VPN or credit card masking. There's dozens and dozens, literally hundreds of them. If you're a digital idiot like me, well, I don't know what I actually need. And by the way, it's wildly expensive. Every one of these things is $10, $15, $20 a month to do it. And suddenly you find yourself with 10 or 12 or 15 of them. The genius of what Hari did is he said, I'm going to give you one solution. I'm going to do it for $15. I'm going to have it all in one thing. It's almost like the brilliance of Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
It's everything in one place and keeps innovating to make sure that they are state of the art, and that's what he's doing.
So I think the core value prop for us is both all in one, everything in one umbrella at a price you can afford. But here's the important thing for us: if you look at any of the solutions in the market, they're almost like fire alarms, right? So you have a negative incident. Oh, you have a virus. I'm going to let you know.
Used in Buenos Aires.
I'm going to let you know about that, right? Yeah. But wouldn't it be better if you could just prevent the fire in your house, right? So that's sort of how we think about it: is what are all the preventative actions we have to take so you don't even have a fire?
Right? So you are almost, let's say, my police force, my security service. We're talking a lot now about this pivot of data to individuals understanding the value of our data, monetizing our data, our digital identity. Do you see that being an area where you will be a helpmate for me on that front?
We are literally in the middle of it because, if you think about any of these actual incidents that happen, like identity theft, transaction pilfering, or IRS fake returns, any of these things, it all starts with the data you put out there, right?
Yeah.
And so
if you don't pay for the product, you are the product.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then if, and somebody fishes you and kind of gets your data out, that's the source of all of these attacks. So that's like the actual raw ingredients that you can then package up and figure out how to monetize. And it's gone from something that was like a hobby or like a ad hoc set of events to a very organized ecosystem now. So there's people that harvest your information. There's sites you can go and literally...
Sounds like the Matrix.
So here's interesting. The FBI put out a report last year that starting in 2020, right, there was more theft around through digital than there was burglaries, right? And it is now continue to go up. So we are, all of us as consumers now, there's more crime going on in our digital lives than in our physical lives in it.
Yeah.
And it just continues to go through the roof. The average household has 49 connected devices.
No, it's crazy. I mean, I guess we've been somewhat immune to it insofar as we can just call our credit card company, say, wasn't me in Buenos Aires.
Yep.
Maybe once we start to think of our data differently, perhaps the value proposition becomes different.
What you said is what most consumers think. It's like, oh, my credit card's going to take care of it. My PC provider, my Apple is going to take care of it, etc. But the reality is, a lot of these crimes are a lot more sophisticated than just taking money out of your bank account, like taking money out of your retirement account, like your 401k, filing a second mortgage on your home that you don't know anything about, and using that information to have like actual physical crimes that can happen with kids or families, etc. So I think the general notion that, hey, like the credit card company takes care of it is probably the single view that we try to disabuse our customers, saying, hey, your life is a lot more wide than
Who's
that.
nervous that you exist?
We kind of look at it as multiple players inside the ecosystem. There are people that are just doing things like antivirus or malware protection type solutions. There are people that do pure identity protection solutions. There are people that just do credit monitoring.
And by the way, they're all good.
They're very good. They're very vertical, and your life is not boxed.
Do you partner with them, or is there a world where you all disrupt
Sometimes,
them?
but in the long term, our hope is you shouldn't have to think about 15 different things. You've got a family, you've got kids, you've got a busy life. Just buy one thing, have it be affordable, and don't worry about this anymore. Let us take care of it.
So I just want to tell you by example here. The number one crime fourth quarter of last year in the state of California was at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoons. These phishing emails went out to hundreds of thousands of customers of the public utility saying, this is your third and final notice. If you do not pay your bill, $260, by 6 o'clock tonight, we have to shut your power off for the weekend.
And you're about to have a party. And
exactly.
Do you know how many people just send their money into it? It's crazy. And so, every day these criminals are out there just figuring out all of these smart things to do, and we just have to stay one step ahead of them.
And that, by the way, wouldn't affect your credit card because you pay it out of your bank account. Once the money's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
You're not getting it back, right? And so,
It's interesting. You've spent your career as a storyteller in many ways. Obviously, you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur. Does that muscle get exercised in this context?
1,000%.
How so? You just told me a good story about 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
It's all about
I'm never
story.
going to, my electric company's being taken
But
off.
I could go on and on and on and tell you stories about why this is relevant. And I think actually that is the next big opportunity for Aura, is for us to tell that story directly to consumers. And so for them to actually start to understand the magnitude of their vulnerability, the problem, and the fact there is a solution. Because nobody really understands that today. I go back years ago, probably nobody here is old enough to remember. Remember when they sold us that bar that you put on your steering wheel?
Oh yeah.
What was that called?
The one that they still use them in New York.
It wasn't LoJack.
It's like the one where they can't steal your car.
The steering wheel.
Right. So, we're the next version of that.
Does this sort of, we've had this period, I don't know if it's like a lot of people are comparing it to the dot-com crash, but certainly there's been an implosion, not just with inflation, the economy shifting. How does that shift conditions for you?
I mean, look, for us, this is my second go-around building a business, and we went through the 2000-2001 crash, the 07-08 crash, and two things kind of come out. One is we have to make sure we're operating our business very efficiently from a cost perspective while building real fundamentals around product market fit and making sure that customers get value from the product. So keep growing revenue, but keep your costs as tight as possible. And the second thing is, in these kinds of pockets, what we found, especially in 07-08, there's a lot of market dislocation. So there are things that maybe you couldn't have afforded in a good cycle because everything had gotten so expensive, where opportunities exist. So we think of it as not, hey, fight to survive and come out the other end, because that'd be a lost opportunity, but how do you really kind of get...
grow through acquisition? Is that part of what you're talking about?
We do acquisitions, but even in the organic, like if media costs start coming down, you can do more advertising, right? If things like...
Yeah, please.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and here's the thing, which is that there are certain, I think, businesses that are more recession-proof than others.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. Security, be it around yourself, around your stuff, around your world, is not something that, you become more vulnerable during these moments, not less. And so from that standpoint, it's a good business. But what I love about Hari is that he plans for the worst and operates that way, just because he's an experienced hand at this and has lived through that before, but he hopes for the best.
You still have to dream, and you still have to want to build something big.
And that's what I would say to entrepreneurs here.
You got to plan for it. Yeah.
I think that's, and I in terms of the arc of our conversation, I feel like when I think about risk threats, there has been this shift to talking about resilience, which really is maybe that alarm bell mentality, because a paralysis can set in when you think about all the threats.
Yeah.
The state-sponsored threats, the credit card threats. How do each of you feel about the threat environment now? Like, is it something that, are you optimistic? Obviously you've got a solution, but are you optimistic that it is moving up on the radar in a way we can handle it? Because it's...
I think that it's in the early stages. I think there's still a lot more room to cover, especially for families and for consumers that have not really had a solution that's very easy for them to use. But in terms of the actual threat and tailwinds itself, there is a lot more of it now than there's ever been, especially with a lot of folks moving online through COVID. A lot more data got created online, and that then attracts a lot more criminals. So I would say the next wave of this is people realizing, oh gosh, I'm using so many more services online, and now I have a lot more security issues than I had before, and I need to start to figure out what to do about that. So that's kind of what we see coming.
How are you feeling about the risk environment? Let's say even just the individual risk. Now we're not talking about the corporate customer, the government customer. Can you help us with
the lines between family and work have blurred. Family and sort of your work environment have blurred quite a bit, like much more than before. Think about everybody working from home, right? It used to be you'd go into your office and that was fortified. They had firewalls, they had all these things set up. Now you're behind a router that you got from your cable provider at home, and there's not a whole lot of security there. And your personal devices and work devices are starting to merge together. So we hear a lot from CISOs and for CTOs of companies saying, listen, when people come back to work or they use a BYOD, bring your own device into work, a whole new level of threats are arising and nobody's solving that. So that's an area we're looking at pretty closely as well.
Okay, one last question before we get to advice, which is a lot of the threats we talk about are almost existential. I did mention, Russian hackers with an election, some cybersecurity risk that shuts down the power grid.
Yep.
Is that a space where you can or will play?
We are not. Again, the way we look at it is,
right?
Again, for us, we want to help people. Like, if you think about, a 0 to 10 risk scale, the things you're talking about, which are nation-sponsored, terrorism attacks, etc., it might be in the scale of 9 to 10. Like, we see families with just very basic hygiene missing, and so we're sort of in that 1 to 6 kind of threat level, basically, and it affects mass amounts of people.
Next year we'll move on to that topic.
Perhaps, yeah.
Any advice, any final thoughts on what you want people to think about? I'm going to start with you, Jeffrey.
I have a bottomless well of optimism. So even though there's a lot of wind in our face right now, I remain hopeful. I always feel that even in difficult times, you stay optimistic, you find opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's what Hari was talking about. And you got to hunker down. You can't ignore it, right? So you got to be resilient, and you got to build what you need to be able to, fight your way through it. But I think those that do are the ones that win.
Great. All right.
I would say in pockets when you're building a business or starting a business, Sometimes you've got a little, wind on your sail, and sometimes it's the other way around. And building a business is hard no matter what.
Where is it right now for you?
Definitely, I would say somewhere in the middle. There's some tailwinds, there's some headwinds as well, like everybody else is. But the thing I would say is, it's hard to do it no matter what, but when you actually start to build something during a tough window, it really forges the company, the team together. You get gritty, you're like, okay, we're going to have to make this work. It brings a sense of unity for the team, and that makes companies stronger. So there's a lot of benefit that comes out of it, too, even though as you're going through it, you say, oh my gosh, this is hard, and there's a lot more headwind now. But so we're happy that in a lot of ways it's making us think and rethink decisions, try and make better choices for the next 3 years, and the teams all come together.
Right, we've definitely picked a problem to solve.
The only thing I laugh about is that I promise you, if anybody else were sitting in his chair right now today, they would have said, the wind is in my sails. Not that he says it's also in his face.
Is
the good news.
That is why he's taking on the threat.
That's why he's running this show.
Exactly. So Jeffery, Katzenberg, Hari, Ravichandran,